Hi, it's the 26th of July 2026, and this video is about the energy transition. And let me start by giving you the punchline. We haven't even started yet. And then you go, well, but we're investing billions and huge amount of money. We're building windmills by the thousands and tens of thousands. The solar panels, everybody has solar panels, electric cars, nuclear fusion. We're spending a huge amount of money on generating electricity, not with fossil fuels. And let me tell you right now, that is a drop in the ocean. And for two reasons. One, electricity, so the energy transition is more than electrification. In fact, electrification is electricity is only 20% of the fossil fuel that we use. So we need to do more than just electrify. Second of all, because of our growing economies, we're using more and more electricity each year and more fossil fuels each year. In fact, we're increasing our fossil fuel use by about 4% each year. And then you say, yeah, but all the windmills and the stuff we build. Yeah, now that amounts to 30% of the 4% increase. That is just a drop of water in the ocean. And we're spending so much money on it, and it's not helping. In fact, what it does is it's slowing down the increase of fossil fuel use. So with all the investments we are making this year, our increased use of fossil fuels may amount to 3% instead of 4%. But to really make an impact, we need to decrease our use of fossil fuels by 20 or 30%. And we're not even slowing down. We're still increasing our use of fossil fuel every year 4%. And we have been for the past decades. So what all the investments we're making right now in renewable energies for the energy transition, it's just one drop of water in the ocean. So what does that mean? It means we have to change our mindset and change our policies to policies that are really effective in decreasing our fossil fuel use. And then you say, but why aren't we doing that? Well, we're not doing that because the oil companies are lobbying the politicians and promoting all kinds of so-called renewable energies like wind, like solar, like nuclear fission, which are not helping. In fact, to build with all the materials you need to make electricity with a windmill, you use a lot of fuels, fossil fuels, to build a windmill. In fact, you use more fossil fuels to build a windmill and then maintain it than you, for the same amount of electricity you generate with that windmill, you would use less fossil fuels if you just poured the gas into an electricity plant straight away and skipped the whole windmill part of it. Wrap your mind around that. a windmill is not renewable and it uses more fossil fuels than if for the same amount of electricity generated. And then you go, yeah, but all the numbers, etc. Yeah, the numbers work if you do not factor in the materials to build the windmill and to build the concrete base it's on and to maintain these windmills, and then within the lifespan, because a windmill has a lifespan of about 20 years, they say. But in fact, it's much less than that. So the lifespan doesn't work. They don't factor in all the materials you need to build it. And so they only look at an existing windmill and how much electricity it generates. And yeah, then it is equal to fossil fuels. But if you take in the materials cost a lot of fossil fuels, because all these materials, these the metals and the concrete and all the rare earth which are in the copper and etc. In building this windmill, the mining, the refining of these metals, the transportation from Africa to Europe of all these metals, and then building the windmill, constructing the windmill, and pouring the concrete base and putting it on top of that. If you add all that, a windmill costs more, almost twice as much fossil fuel than a gas-powered electricity plant. So windmills are not the solution. Well, the ones we use right now. The same goes for nuclear fission, because nuclear fission is a red herring, because technically and on a science level, we're no way near building a nuclear fission power plant which generates more electricity than it costs. Nowhere near. Like the most optimistic estimates are 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And we're pouring huge amounts of money, hundreds of billions. We're pouring into research on nuclear fusion. And it is not going to provide us with cheap renewable energy in the next 50 years. And then you ask me, yeah, but why are we spending so much money? Well, because the big oil companies are lobbying the politicians to pour all their money into research of nuclear fission. So we will not pour that money into research into effective, cheap, renewable energy within 10 years. Because there are a lot of promising projects going on right now that will give us cheap renewable energy in 10 years. The only thing is they're starving them of money, so they never materialize. They're just pouring all the money they could put into profitable R&D. They're taking all the money away and putting it into nuclear fusion. So we will continue to be dependent on fossil fuels. So that's the first change we need to accomplish. In our mind, we need to realize the technological and scientific fact that right now, what we call renewable energy, like windmills and solar panels, are not reducing our fossil fuel consumption. In fact, with all the materials we use, it actually increases our fossil fuel consumption. So every dollar we put into building windmills is taking us further and further away from our goal, which is energy transition to using less fossil fuels. So what we need to do is stop using old technologies and start pouring the money we use for nuclear fusion and all the other stuff and building windmills, pour all the money into research and development of truly renewable, cheap energy. The startups and the first research, the basic research on a lot of these projects is already done. We need to develop it. And that's where the money needs to go and not where it's going now. Stop building windmills. Stop investing in nuclear fusion. Now, I love science, and I do want us to have nuclear fusion at some point in the future. But right now, we need truly cheap renewable energy within 10 years. And the only way we're going to do that is take the money away from futile, very interesting, but not very practical research and all those hundreds of billions into a lot of research and development to startups, which are now starving and can't move on because they lack money. So that's the thing. So politicians need to change their policies from what the oil companies want to what the scientists and the research and developers want. And that means we have to change our mindset, because we've been told that if we put solar panels on our roof and drive an electric car and have windmill parks in the sea by the thousands and pay billions for this privilege, we are being told that is an energy transition, which it isn't, and that will solve our problems because it will decrease our dependence on fossil fuel, which it doesn't. And any scientist will tell you this. The politicians, the propaganda, the policies are fixing numbers and telling lies, basically, to convince us to spend money on keep on using fossil fuels instead of putting our money in research and development for true, cheap, renewable energy. And the only persons who can force our politicians to stop listening to the oil companies and start listening to the scientists and the people who with knowledge are you and me, the voters. So vote for political parties which have a realistic, scientifically proven plan of investing in achieving renewable and cheap energies, at least not fossil fuel, relying on fossil fuels for energy, and and vote for these political parties. So that's video number 1.